Hi class. Here are some more examples for to help you with graphing. These are the last couple of examples on your 5-6 notes. We did example 2 in class, so I'm just going to do videos for the next couple examples. So you'll be given an equation on your exam, and you'll have to know the steps. I will not lead you into these steps on your exam, but the first step you do is we need to factor out how that period is affecting the shift. So I'm going to factor out a negative pi. And then a negative times a negative will give me a positive. And for this becoming, I got to think negative pi times what will give me pi over 2. That would be 1/2. All right, so we know then our amplitude is 1. Our period is never negative. So we take our original period, which is 2 pi, and we divide it by pi. So we get 2. We know our midline is y equals 3. And we have a horizontal shift right here that goes right 1/2. Okay, then we also know this piece, this negative right here, is a reflection because it's inside about the y-axis. All right. So in class, we talked about this one being an even function because it's cosine. And what that means is when you put a negative inside this function, it will not affect the output. Visually, what's happening is it's already reflected about the y-axis. So you could ignore that negative, but for this video, I'm not going to, just so you buy into it, that happens. So I'm going to go down here. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller so I can actually see my equation. I'm going to give myself a scale. Since I know my amplitude is 1 and I have a midline of 3, I know I don't need a lot of negatives, so I'm going to do this so I can get a better view. All right, this, remember all these things, amplitude being 1, periods 2, midlines y equals 3, right 1/2, all of those things help me decide on my scale. I'm going to do every other tick mark, and I like to make that first one be 1/2, 1, 1, 1/2, so this has to be 2. And then I'm going to do every other tick mark here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So key thing is make sure you give yourself a scale. All right, I'm going to plot y equals 3 as our midline. That's not where y equals 3 is. Y equals 3 is here. Now what I also am going to, why can't I see it? It's so funny. I'm going to erase that. I need to make this bigger. All right, I'm going to go here. Okay. I'm also going to plot my shift. So we went right 1/2, which would be here, because this is really going to help me with that reflection piece. So again, these are not part of your graph. They just help me to graph. Let me go ahead and choose a new color. So we're talking about the cosine graph. Originally, remember cosine starts at a high point, and if it wasn't shifted at all, it'd just be 1 up from your midline, which would be right here. That's if I had no shift happening. But I do have a shift happening, so I'm going to get rid of that and put back my scale. All right, so I have a highlight. I'm going to shift it over right 1/2, so that's why it goes right here. Now, with this reflection piece, what we're going to do is this vertical shift, that is the y I'm reflecting over, because it takes care of both things, right? I mean, if we reflect over the y and we shift, we will get the same thing right here if we shift over the horizontal shift. So now that is a high point. So I know just because, remember, cosine goes like this: high point, midline, low point, midline, high point. Because of this pattern, they all have to follow, all cosines have to follow that pattern. If I'm at a high point, my next point has to be a midline. There's no other option. My next point has to be a low point. My next has to be a midline. And then my next one, if I wanted to go, that would complete one full period. So you really only need like the first one, especially if it's a high point. If it's a midline, it's a little harder because you're like, do I go up or down on the next one? So just to follow it out so I can get 2 full periods, this guy's a midline, low point, midline, high point, midline. And so I'm going to go ahead and make my wave. And then after I'm done making my wave, make sure you give yourself coordinates. So this is 2, 3. This guy would be -1, 3. I'm just choosing random ones. And this is 1/2, 4. All right. Let's go ahead and check one of the coordinates on your exam. I would love it if you checked all of them to really confirm that you did it right, or at least 2. So let's check that 2, 3 one. So f of 2, excuse me, it should be g of 2. And I like to always go back to the original in case I butchered that factoring. Cosine negative pi times 2 plus pi over 2 plus 3. So then I get cosine negative 2 pi plus pi over 2 plus 3. Combine what's inside those parentheses and you get negative 3 pi over 2 plus 3. And this right here, if I use my unit circle, that gives me 0. So I get 0 plus 3. So I get 3. And it works. Okay, I'll post a couple more.